The meeting opened with pictures taken of the president and Elvis Presley.
When we walked across to the desk, Elvis was clutching these badges from various police departments, and then he had two pictures with him, one of Lisa Marie and one of Priscilla. He placed these on the president's desk, and the president came around the desk and was sort of stood there at the edge of the desk, and Elvis began to go through them, and the president picked up the pictures, and I remember there was one of Lisa Marie in a baby bonnet, and the president looks at them and said, "Oh, she's a beautiful little girl," and Elvis smiled, and then he leaned over and he pulled back his cuffs and started showing the president his cufflinks, and the president leans over and said, "Oh, very nice cufflinks." These were cufflinks that he had been given by the vice president at some place, so I'm not sure this was a hint that maybe you could do better than these.
The president mentioned that he thought Presley could reach young people and that it was important for Presley to retain his credibility. Presley responded that he did his thing by just singing.
The actual discussion did not follow any clear pattern. He said, "Well, you know, Mr. President, the Beatles are kind of anti-American." And the president sort of looked at me like they are. Then he brought up another subject. He said, "You know, Mr. President, there's been a loss of respect for the flag." And the president could somewhat agree to that. And Elvis said that he'd made a study of communist brainwashing, and that was getting into a subject that I didn't see any hope of finding any commonality. We didn't have a communist brainwashing program underway, so there wasn't much he could do with us on that issue. What I thought was happening here was Elvis was trying to find things to say that would align himself with the president. Basically, almost saying, I can be an emissary for some of the ideas that you believe in, but obviously have to keep my credibility, which the president said, "Yeah, I'll make sure you keep your credibility. Don't let anybody know you were here."
The president then indicated that those who use drugs are also those who are in the vanguard of anti-American protest. Violence, drug usage, dissent, protest all seem to merge in generally the same group of young people.
And then Elvis asked the question. He said, "Well, Mr. President, can you get me a badge from the Bureau of Narcotics?" And the president turned to me, because this is something that we had not anticipated, and I hadn't written in the talking points for the president. And he said, "Well, Bud, can we get him a badge?" I said, "Well, sir, if you want to get him a badge, we can get him a badge." He said, "Well, make sure that he gets one. I want him to get one."
So Bud Crow called over to me and said, "Jeff, call over to the Justice Department and get a BNDD badge." I said, "Sure enough." So I called John Finlater, the director of the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, and I said, "John, President Nixon is meeting with Elvis Presley." Well, first there was a disbelief. I said, "No, John, this is really happening, and the president wants to give Elvis a BNDD badge." John said, "Well, we can't do that." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, Elvis isn't an agent. He can't have a badge." I responded, "John, you don't understand. The leader of the Western world wants Elvis Presley to have a BNDD badge. Get me a damn badge."
Elvis at that point stepped forward, and I believe it was in his left arm. He grabs the president and he hugs him. And president hugging was not a commonplace in the Oval Office, at least in my limited experience. And Mr. Nixon, as many people know, is a very formal person. And being hugged by a guest was probably not foremost in his mind when he went to work that day. And as I observed this hug, I got to thinking this may well be the last meeting they're going to let me schedule. After the hug was over, Elvis stepped back and he said, "Mr. President, would you have some time to meet a couple of my friends who are here? It would mean a great deal to them." The president turned to me and said, "Well, Bud, do we have time for that?" I wasn't sure what the right answer to that question was. But, I mean, we were in so deep by that time, I said, "Sure, we've got time for that. I'll go get him."
We opened the door, and I kind of slide in to the right, and Jerry kind of slides in beside me. We're kind of up against the wall. We don't just walk in. This is the Oval Office. It's holy ground. And Elvis says, "Come on, guys." And he pulls us on into the room. And he said, "Mr. President, here's my guys." And he comes around his desk and comes up. And I'm standing here, and he hit me on the shoulder. He said, "You got a couple of big ones here. They take good care of you." And he said, "Oh, yes, sir, they sure do."
I remember him hitting me on the shoulder kind of like a guy, you know, and saying, "Well, you got some pretty big guys here, Elvis."
And after they'd shaken hands and talked for a while, the president went behind his desk to get some gifts. And this was a customary thing that the president would do. He'd and it was in the bottom drawer of his desk, and he opened the drawer, and in that were gifts that were sort of lined up according to the importance of the visitor. And Elvis was overcome with curiosity as to what was in that drawer. And one of my abiding memories of this meeting is Elvis walking behind the desk, bending over that drawer with the president, and they're rooting through this drawer together. And out come the paperweights and the pen knives.
He comes up and he gives us these 14-karat gold keychains with the presidential seal. Hands one to Jerry and to myself. And we thank him very much, and Elvis looks at him and said, Mr. President, they got wives, too. So he said, oh, okay. So he goes back and he comes back with these presidential seal pendants.
They left loaded down, and I think everybody was very pleased with what they'd been given.